What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And of course, we have a spectacular panel, as always. Let's go ahead and introduce our special guest today. You've seen him on Cageside Press. You've seen him on this show before. I know I've done a couple of appearances on his show as well. One of the best guys in the industry. I thoroughly enjoy the times we get to sit cageside and shoot the shit. But with no further ado, my man, Gabriel Gonzalez, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thank you for the words. Thank you for having me again, guys. I really appreciate it. Really do.
All right, it's going to be a good time. And of course, we have the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing really well. We got, kind of a bare bones UFC card this past weekend to talk about, but there was a ton of other shit going on. And then obviously we have a big one coming up this week. So it's a great night to be here.
All right. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, my man, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
I'll be straight. I'm exhausted because this weekend we had all the fights happen from all over the world, back to back to back to back to back. But if not for the love of the game, what are you going to do it for? So, stat of the week is from one of these many cards that we endured as crazy media people. 9 is the stat of the week because Mariusz Pudzianowski, the world's strongest man, fought in the KSW 59 headliner as a super heavyweight. And there have been 10 super heavyweight fights in KSW history. Pudzianowski is part of 9 of them. So he is the super heavyweight of super heavyweights. And would you be surprised that he knocked a guy out that, well, we'll talk about that later.
He is ducking Bombardier Gia. I mean, there can be no other answer.
I got to think that Bombardier's appendix is ducking him. I don't know.
Bombardier's appendix probably could fight at flyweight. I mean, that's a big motherfucker.
333 ready pounds.
All right, so let's go toward the UFC last Saturday. Derek Brunson and Kevin Holland had themselves a main event, finished with Derek Brunson winning a unanimous decision. Very strange fight in a lot of ways, but I think it creates some other questions that we should spend a little time to address. The end result, man, did it make you think that Brunson is ready for true title contendership? Kevin Holland isn't, or something else, or something in the middle? Gabriel, I'll start with you.
I think that was a great example of Derek Brunson's growth. I think that he was very patient, and that led to it being a less than exciting fight when you put it all together with who he had in front of him. In terms of Kevin Holland, I think part of it is okay, he was out wrestled by a guy who was just a better wrestler. I don't think the talk was as prevalent as I think some people are making it out to be. And then if you talk about, is he too small for middleweight? I'm like, that's possible, but I also feel like he was doing really well in the second round to say that it's that simple. And secondly, he's such a very lean guy at 185 already that I really don't want to see him try to do like Anthony Pettis trying to make featherweight. He's already so lean at 155. I think trying to get Holland down isn't the answer. I think there's just a bit of weightlifting and maybe just a bit of growth in his game he's got to address. But at the end of the day, that was just Derek Brunson growing with the team at Sanford MMA and Henry Hooft, in my opinion.
I think Gabe nailed it. This is the kind of fight that the Derek Brunson of 3 or 4 years ago might have found a way to lose. It reminds me of Blachowicz versus Adesanya, where the smaller guy, the less proven guy, at least in the division where the fight was taking place, was nonetheless the sexy pick going in, and the older, bigger fighter just won with poise, fight IQ, and just good old fashioned muscle. And I don't think it's a question of Holland being too small. Holland walks around at the same weight as the last 2 middleweight champs, like Adesanya and Whitaker. Those are 2 of probably the smaller middleweights in the top 10 right now. Like, in fact, the 3 of them, Holland, Whitaker, and Adesanya, might be the 3 smallest, top 10, top 15 middleweights. It's not a question of size. It's a question of approach. He flat out, I don't know if he could have fought off the takedowns or could have gotten back up in those first 3 rounds, but I know he didn't try very hard. You know, that's the real drawing board moment for him.
I struggle with this fight because I, like most of us, expected Holland would do the thing, an accurate striker, and Derek Brunson tends to struggle with those guys that can land pinpoint shots. And for a few minutes we thought that was the case. I believe on the Shillen and Duffy recap show, there was always that moment in your head until like the last 20, 30 seconds of the fight that you thought, man, Kevin Holland could win this thing at any time he wants. If he pulls the trigger, if he lands those shots and stops jumping into punches, which then lets Brunson grab hold of him. It's funny. I'm not sure I'm of the mind of Derek Brunson as a contender. I think this is this to me was more of a attending the gate moment than it was an actual Derek Brunson's ready for higher contention, because Derek Brunson was hurt badly many times during the fight and survived. I think it was the second round when he was really in trouble and hit a desperation takedown when Holland was kind of dancing and laughing and playing around. And I think of some of the other fighters in the division wouldn't go down as easily or would keep hitting him. So I feel like Brunson at 37 has turned. He hasn't turned a corner, but I remember his early Strikeforce tenure. He was a grinder. Like, he could get the job done by sheer brute force, and he'd drag you to the ground and do mean things to you, and maybe could choke you out. But if not, who cares? He'll just do whatever he feels like doing. And I think, the only person who beat him in Strikeforce was Jacare when Jacare was Jacaracing. And it's just, I feel like no one's stock changed in this fight. I don't feel, maybe we can say Holland was a little overhyped, but I don't think so, because I think we're going to get him to come out there. Say he fights like Chris Weidman next. You know what he'll do to Chris Weidman unless he gets put in his back. He'll lance him. So I feel like this is one of those main events where nothing seemed to really change for me.
I'm definitely with you on that one, Jay. It's really hard for me to come down on Kevin Holland for his performance when he had a lot of moments of success. If you want to talk about the trash talk during the fight, and maybe that was a distraction, I mean, that's just him. That's just what he does. Yeah. And I think if you watch a fight with him, you kind of know what to expect on that end. And then for Derek Brunson, I mean, he definitely used the better game plan to get things done. The job was accomplished, but man, that was a very tough outing for him. That was a tougher fight for him than I think it appeared at first watch. Even just the level of fatigue that he had going into the championship rounds, he was gassed. He just happened to be able to capitalize off of Holland's mistakes. I think in particular him overextending on the strikes and kind of either one, overextending, or two, like bringing too much of his body with him as he would throw strikes and kind of opening himself up to clinch opportunities. I think with just a small amount of tweaks here and there, I think we're talking about a much different result. A much different result. So I'm really, strange enough, I'm almost kind of higher on Kevin Holland after this, because Brunson is a difficult style matchup for him. Just that sort of wrestler who's known to be pretty durable and has steadily improved over the last several years. That seems like a guy who would be tougher for Holland, but I think he passed the tests without passing the tests, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So
He made it a pass or fail rather than an A to F.
Right, yeah. Right. If we're grading on a curve, and okay, he really got 75% of the answers right, but some knucklehead in the class got everything right, so everyone else fails. That's sort of what I think happened here. So I'm okay with their stock remaining exactly the same. Brunson still feels like a gatekeeper to me. Holland still feels like an emerging contender. So we'll see what plays out in their next fight. So fellas, now, I mean, we did just have a brief discussion about the main event, and it was what it was. Despite what Dana said, it was worth sticking around for. I believe. I don't know if you guys saw that video of him
ducking out in the fifth round.
Ducking out like God forbid, you're watching mixed martial arts and people mix their martial arts. God forbid that happens. But anyway, was this event even worth running in your eyes, or was this sort of just throwaway material?
I mean, I think that you could say that about many different events, big or otherwise, right? We don't know until we actually get to the end of them. In the end, was it the most stacked card? I'm not gonna lie to you and say yeah. That would just be silly. But yeah, I thought there were a couple fun finishes. I thought the undercard, it's about take the name value out of it. Did you get good, exciting MMA in a lot of instances? More or less, I'd give it a yeah. But is it going to get you excited if you're tuning into the UFC every week that this is a particularly big and special card? No. Now, did I enjoy Kevin Holland's whole thing with Khabib? Did I think it made for great television? Absolutely. Do I think that's the best route to success every night in and night out? No, but I could tell you Saturday night, I was kind of hoping they would just push Khabib out there and just see what he says. I think it would have been one of the best things they could have done for ratings. But yeah, it was a decent night of mixed martial arts, if not the biggest names involved.
Yeah, you think hopefully that there was like an extra fight kit that Khabib could have just put on and just jumped in the corner. That actually would have been very, very entertaining. That was probably my favorite part of the whole night, was that exchange between the two.
I seriously thought it was possible. I seriously thought, what, Dana White's just like, just go for it. Who gives it? Just do it and just see what happens.
I saw some device in his hand that looked like a walkie-talkie or an old, like a CB radio device. I didn't know if he was speaking into that or if that was just his phone and it was weird looking. This card felt like a post-Contender Series card. Like, it felt like the card that Contender Series fighters should fight on to get to the UFC. Because at the rate the UFC is signing people from the Contender Series, they're signing basically like well over half the winners, if not more. This rate, the numbers, I'm sure some people probably keep them. Anyway, it did. It felt like this was more of a sifting through to see if we got anything, to see if we got something out of the Bays family, to see if Adrian Yanez can keep going, to see if these other sort of growing names are getting there. It did. It felt like a Contender Series Plus card more than an actual UFC card. I mean, the main event wasn't the main event the only one that had at least one top 10 fighter on it.
Macy's Chasson was borderline-ish.
I thought Chasson and Renault were like 11 and 12 or 12 and 13.
Yeah.
So it was a very low stakes event, which is just so tough in the era that the UFC runs triple title fight events like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, definitely some good thoughts there. Ben, anything you want to add to that?
No, I enjoyed it for what it was. It's in an era when we're getting these 15 fight death marches where 9 of the 15 fights go to decision, and you're just questioning all your life choices if you work in this industry. This was like a 10 fight snack. 6 of the fights ended in knockout. Yeah, there were only 2 top 10 fighters on the card, but you know what? I stayed up all fucking night to watch Ryzen 27, and I think there were only 2 top 10 fighters on that whole card. And again, they were in the main event. I'm fine. I'm here for it either way. I'm at local shows where there might only be 1 fighter on the whole card that's even UFC material, and they're not there yet. Shout out to Adrian Yanez, who I think I've seen like almost all his fights in person. So yeah, it was good for what it was. Free card on cable. Good times.
Everybody's so positive today, huh? I'm not sure how to handle that.
Well, I'll rain on a parade for a second. This was an ESPN card that used to mean something. It used to be that this was the threshold between generic fight night card to pay-per-view. This was we're trotting out the contenders, the legit guys, everybody besides the champions, and this wasn't that kind of card. This was the phoning it in UFC on ESPN, like kind of towards the end of the UFC on Fox era, when you're like, okay, this doesn't feel like the old days when they were title fights, and when Phil Davis fought Rashad Evans, you went, oh boy, that's going to be fun, and those kinds of matchups that we've fallen pretty hard. That this for a ho-hum 10 fight card, this felt interchangeable with any other fight night card, and I don't think it's supposed to. because this is on big ESPN for a reason. And it didn't feel like this card was on big ESPN for a reason. I think it was more of a, well, we have a slot on ESPN, so let's just put that Fight Night card on it. And that's too bad.
It would have felt it would have felt different if Gillespie Riddell had stayed on this card and Gillespie came back, reminded us who he was, and then Holland just put on a complete star-making performance in the main event. Like if Holland had just completely dunked on Brunson in a round and a half, this would have felt bigger. I think it felt a little more ho-hum because of some of the fights we lost on the way to the cage and then what actually happened in the main event.
Right. This felt like this was supposed to be a star-making moment for Holland. You know, if he goes out there and absolutely dusts Derek Brunson, then we're talking about probably the next guy in line for Israel Adesanya. That's sort of the direction that things felt like they were pointing toward. So, all right, fellas, let's move things along now to eating crow. This is where we break out the seasoning salt, we break out the cracked pepper, we break out the hot sauce, and you season up crow however you like. Munch it down with a smile. Gabriel, why are you eating crow this week?
You know what? So I was all in on my neighbor Jesse Strader, who was the second fight of the night against Montel Jackson. I know him personally, like, and when I say like, no, legit, he lives 2 minutes from this door, pretty much down the street in the car. Very proud of him taking the fight on 9 days' notice against a more experienced guy. I think taller, longer, had a lot of attributes. It did not go his way. And, you know, I do eat crow with a smile because I would encourage everyone who's only saw him on Saturday night. He's an exciting guy. He's a tough guy. And I know he's working on getting back out there to just give a better performance in his next one. So, yeah, just to inject that one.
Hey, I'll throw out there that, you know, I do a preview show for UFC cards, and in studying Jesse Strader, my thought at the end of it was, this guy may very well be like UFC ready in a couple more fights, but this is just too much too early on short notice. So I'm interested to see now what he does.
Combach Global is looking for people, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And he was a Combach fighter for a while, wasn't he?
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Yeah. I think that, hey, maybe there you go.
All right, Ben, what is your eating crow this week?
Well, my neighbors did just fine as Houston went 2-0 on the night. I mean, Trevin Giles may be nervous as always. He has to have the most uncomfortable, like white knuckle 3-fight win streak in the UFC right now. But, you know, like God love him, he's on a 3-fight win streak. I had Marion Renault beating Macy Chiasson, and I know I was in the minority on that. I know that you know, Chiasson was the favorite, but I just thought this is one where she might not be quite ready. Renault, despite being 43, is still a plus athlete by the standards of that division. She is still stronger and faster than most of the bantamweights in the UFC. Incredibly, for a woman in her 40s, her gas tank is not a liability. And I thought she'd be able to outlast Chiasson, who has a very hard cut to 135. I was wrong. Like, Chiasson was fantastic, and she's already moved past the Megan Anderson phase, where if you're that tall for that division and your legs, you know, go up to your chin, you're always going to be deficient as a defensive wrestler. But Chiasson has already been like, I'm just going to steer into it. I will go for takedowns when I need to, because if this fight's go into the ground, I want it to go there under my terms. So she's already learned a lesson that Anderson really has not yet. And I just thought she looked really good against Renault. I think this is the best win of Chiasson's career. I am ready to see her take on the true top of the division in a way I was not 3 days ago. And yeah, it's a bummer for Renault, who remains competitive even though she's on a 4-fight losing streak. But yeah, that's my crow, and I don't mind eating it this week.
All right, sounds good. Jay, why are you eating crow this week?
Now, we know that love is dead because both the Pays family members lost embarrassingly in various ways on this fight card. But one in particular I thought would win. I only expected one of the Bays would win, and it was not Cheyenne. I thought JP Bays was going to come in and do what Bruno Silva is weak against. Like, this is Bruno Silva, a guy who got out-wrestled and choked out by Khalid Taha, out-wrestled and beaten up by David Dvorak, out-wrestled and done whatever with Tagir Lambakov. So, JP Bays, a pretty decent wrestler in his own right, who can do some good. You know, I mean, you can probably see his accolades somewhere. He's a legit guy would just go, I've seen the tape. I can do that better than this other guy can. I'm going to do that. And he didn't. And because of that, Bruno Silva was able to piece him up faster, hit harder, all of the above, and knocked him out and knocked him down 3 times, which, by the way, is a flyweight record that I believe only John Lineker and Matthias Nicolau, who is now back in the UFC, have pulled off three knockdowns in a flyweight fight. He did it in a round and a half. So Bays did the one thing he shouldn't have done, and I didn't see that happening. I saw Path of Least Resistance, hit the takedown, get him in a choke, do whatever he has to do, and get it done in like a round and change. And he got smoked. And I'm eating crow because I didn't think Bruno Silva was UFC caliber, and I guess he's going to get a contract now. So there you go. Delicious.
All right, sounds good. So I guess my eating crow, it's not that much crow to eat, but I'm happy to go ahead and take a bite. Max Griffin versus Keenan Song. Like, I saw the right winner. I thought Max Griffin would emerge victorious in that, but I just didn't see it happening via knockout. I thought this would be Griffin to show off superior technique and just kind of wear him down over time and win a decision here against a guy who I think the welterweight division should be watching in Keenan Song. So I thought this would be a good a moment for Griffin to be like, hey, I'm the true vet, and back up for a second. He did that just a lot more violently than I predicted. So I'm happy to go ahead and eat that crow. Max Griffin, one of the nice guys in the sport of mixed martial arts as well. So I want to throw that out there. All right, gentlemen. So now we're going to move on to the swing or miss portion of the show. We had a bit of a scare here. Julija Stoliarenko actually fainted on the scale. Twice, yes, and they let her go back to the scale. This was pure lunacy. It took a little while, but the cooler heads prevailed, and she ended up being pulled from the card. Her bout was canceled. I mean, watching something like this, do you think that the UFC has a serious problem with weight cutting that needs to be addressed?
I think that you could say that every week when you see what a lot of the men and women go through. I do acknowledge that while it was scary, I think that not a lot of people will be public about the fact that how close they come to having that happen to them each and every week. So I do want to give a little bit, I guess, a bit of leverage. It was scary. And I do think that after the first fall, just the optics of it, that should have been already like, hey, we don't need to go anymore.
Exactly.
I do respect the fact that, hey, get a little bit of water inside somebody in 2 minutes. Was she already on weight when she stepped on that scale? Okay, I understand it's a little bit of a gray area, but I think optically it looked bad. Once again, I acknowledge that a lot of fighters have a really tough cut and are closer to that than we ever really know, but it didn't look good. And when you see that happen to anybody, you just don't like it. You want to care about.
We care. We all do care.
We do care. What happened there?
Connectivity
Gabe's
issues.
browser is fainting on the scale.
It's all right. I'll pick up where he left off because I'm a little more fired up about this situation than some people are. Oh, Gabe's back. Go ahead, Gabe. Continue.
Yeah, what's weird, the strongest wind gust, and I'm like, it's in the desert, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You get a strong wind and electronics really f up. Anyway, but that's just all I felt like. I think weight cuts are tough anyway, and I understand that. Hey, had Julia been all right in a couple minutes, still has to get paid, right? So I do understand that area, but the second you see it happen, you just want them to go that extra mile with safety.
That is an excellent question you posed there. Julija Stoliarenko officially hit weight, 135 and a half pounds. She made the weight, and then the fight was canceled. Did she get her show money? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out when the disclosures come out because they stopped disclosing pay in Vegas. I, however, as I alluded to when Gabe exploded for a second, I'm a little more fired up about this. And I'm going to say something controversial that people aren't going to like. So please wait till I finish, audience members, to skewer me. I'm swinging full blast like that Ui full swing guy in Ryzen. UFC has a real problem. It's an endemic problem across MMA. But the UFC is the most powerful brand in the sport by a factor of 10. Sorry Bellator, sorry PFL, sorry Ryzen, etc., etc. UFC has the ability to change the landscape of the sport. Remember we talked last week about how the UFC could change the gloves and it would trickle down across the board. This is a situation the UFC could resolve in certain ways. And state commissions are trying to rectify this. California has a couple proposals on the plan, same-day weigh-ins, difference in weight versus fight day and the weigh-in day. But the controversial thing I want to say, I as a media member need to see this more often, because this moment that we don't get to see unless we check Instagram or hear Angela Hill saying, I actually wiped out in the bathtub once and so one of my corner teammates saved me. We don't get to see the failures. And the failures are what make things happen. The failures are what draw action. One championship had its own issues with weight, and it took a guy dying for them to change everything. Now, I'm not advocating for one championship's solution, because we don't actually know what it is, because all of their procedures are done behind a smoke screen, and there are a lot of question marks. If there was something I would raise as a solution, it would actually be something from another international organization. In Ryzen, like Pride did in the past, except for to a stronger degree, you miss weight, you start the fight with a red card, which means -2 points. So you hope to come back, and if you are close, you might still lose a decision. And if you win the fight, it is an automatic no contest because you missed weight. This actually happened in a kickboxing match. A guy came in 2 pounds heavy. He walked out there. He starched his opponent. No contest because he missed weight. That is the kind of level of severity to do that. Now, of course, saying that takes away a win bonus, and win bonuses mean everything in the sport, because fighters bank on getting 2 paychecks, like Derek Brunson and his little "I got 2 paycheck" dance he did. Obviously, a no contest eliminates that one win bonus, which is half of their income for a lot of fighters. So the UFC would have to change a lot to do that, and I'm sure they'd be very happy to take possible paychecks away from potential winners. But I think it needs to be something drastic, because it breaks my heart, but it's just a matter of time until something really terrible happens on the UFC's level. And the fact that it hasn't in the past 25 years is actually miraculous, because we've seen all kinds of things that have gone horribly wrong. We've seen kidney failures. We've seen other nasty hospitalizations. Who I think it's MMA Weekly, or I think it's MMA Weekly or MMA Mania, that has a list of their bad weight cuts. And combat sports attorney Eric McCracken also has a list of really bad weight issues that go on. We need to see these kinds of failures and drama and trauma. We need to be able to see this, to point the picture, to make the video of the villainous thing. We don't want Alex K. Lee to be the villain. We want the scales and the weight cuts and all those things to be no, really, this is killing fighters. I don't think Kevin Holland should move back down to welterweight. I don't think Roman Dolidze should have moved to middleweight. You know how bricked up that guy is. He's killing himself to get there. Macy Chasson killing herself to get to 135. Why not fight at 145? You win one and you get a title shot. So I think there's just it's just a total complete change that needs to happen, and I don't know who needs to start it, but somebody needs to start it.
Yeah, this is something that, like, if nothing is done, like, we're going to be talking about something really, really tragic.
Yeah.
It's a shame to know that this sort of thing happens a lot behind closed doors. I think the only instance that we know of for sure, at least off the top of my head, is when Renan Barão did it ahead of the rematch with TJ Dillashaw, and that's only because it X'd the fight out, that he passed out in the bathtub and hit the back of his head on the wall or something like that, and got knocked out. So
we have Trevin Giles on this card. Yeah. This happened to him a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But no video camera, we forget about it.
Right, exactly.
I mean, when I was covering 247 in Houston, alongside of this guy right here, personally witnessed Antonio Arroyo walk off the scales, walk away, and face plant right off that because he was just so dehydrated and whatnot. And it
Like
wasn't
literally landed on his face. Yeah.
You can hear me on the weigh-in video going, oh, expletive, dude, he just wiped out. Oh my God, someone should check him out. I have a loud voice, so you can't miss it on any weigh-in video. If that were on video, it would be a much more effective story to show the most gruesome slideshow you can imagine. Like, this isn't the one championship fighter that died is not the first or the last that passed away because of weight issues. On the lower scale, this happens at a not a regular level, like say like a boxer passes away because of brain trauma, not to that level, but it happens more often than we want to think about it. And it breaks my heart to know what the fighters go through. And I don't know.
I was kind of reminded of when I was at UFC 229 and seeing Aspen Ladd step on the scale before her fight against Tanya Evinger. And like, that was a genuinely frightening moment to see someone on that scale like that. And then, knowing that, wow, in like 24 hours, she's going to be taking punches to the head. Now, she ended up winning against Tanya Evinger the next day, but I believe it was her next fight against Germaine de Randamie, where she had a very similar scene on the scale, and she got knocked out very quickly. Now, chalk it up to GDR skill, but chalk it up also to a depleted brain. It's one of those things where we've seen hints of it too often. And that was just a bit too close to kind of forcing us to deal with this reality. I mean, if we don't deal with it after something like this, it's going to take a death, essentially. And shout out to all the dummies, at the athletic commission, that when she passed out, how it was this rush to pick her back up.
Stay down.
You guys are a little extra stupid. So just got to get that off my chest. Fellas, let's move on now to the greatest titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or, ironically, did not over the course of the past week. So, Ben, I'm going to begin with you. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, in an era in which we are constantly riding the UFC and other major promotions for their matchmaking, just for some of the nonsense matchups they make, that we've actually on this show considered starting a segment called Cease and Desist, where we pick out a particular matchup that's been announced that just makes no sense. I will give credit where credit is due. Late last week, the UFC announced 2 high-level bantamweight matchups coming up. TJ Dillashaw returning and facing Corey Sandhagen, and Cody Garbrandt taking on Rob Font. I love both of those matchups on several levels. One, Dillashaw versus Sandhagen, I think, is a fantastic return. I'm glad that Dillashaw is not going to march straight back into a title shot, because even though he never lost the bantamweight title in the cage, we did last see him in a loss. We saw him one of the more extravagantly disgraced high-level fighters in recent memory. It's great for him to come back in against a legit top 5 contender who can let us know, if he's still got it. For Sandhagen, I'm sure he would have preferred, a quicker route back to a title shot, but this is a name value opponent, of which there are relatively few in this division. I love that one. Garbrandt versus Font. I love that Garbrandt has given up on the whole flyweight thing. We just finished this conversation. Garbrandt does not look like a man with an extra 10 pounds to spare. And on top of it all, I get to see 2, maybe, I won't say but certainly 2 of the best boxers in the bantamweight division, lay it on the line against each other. Can't wait for that fight. So I am surprised. I wish I weren't, but I am surprised most pleasantly that the UFC bantamweight division is all of a sudden a really, really exciting place up in the top 10.
Yeah, definitely some great fight announcements there. Like, both of those sound just chef's kiss on that one. Gabriel,
and both of them did damage to my heavyweight looks awesome and better than bantamweight argument. I went, no.
Yeah, that didn't age well. We might have to clip that out and put it out again for your embarrassment.
I hope so.
No, but we'll make it all black and white and make like Jay's
Yeah. We need like some menacing pictures of you for the
You got
thumbnail.
some mood music in the background too.
Gabriel, I'm turning the mic over to you next. What is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
To be honest, Ben kind of took it. I was going to go, all right, whichever one he doesn't say, I'll just roll with that. And this guy, he had to have both of them, like coming to the dinner table. It's like, you want the steak or the chicken? I just give it all. It's like
steak and the lobster.
No, nothing really to add. I mean, I think I'm sure everyone will take a lot of that. But yeah, the bantamweights, I really like it. I thought that it kind of flew under the radar with everything else that happened during the week. But that just kind of gets those dominoes rolling. I mean, I think especially after the Aljo Petr Yan thing, I said, look, if we had a clear winner, don't be surprised if either TJ or Sandhagen kind of go right into it, depending on what the schedule needs. But the second that pushed back, that was automatically always going to be it, is have Corey and TJ fight each other. So I like it. I like what it means for everybody involved. In terms of TJ, you build him back up. Corey, you give him that win that no matter who wins in the title, you could really sell the rematch with Aljo or the shot at Petr. So all around, I think it ends up working out for the best for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe I can hold out hope once again for that Aldo Cruz fight. That's just, please, can we get that? If not, Cruz Edgar, just come on now, give it to me. Jay, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I was really looking forward to talking about the two bantamweight matchups that came out this past week. All right, so let's get weird. Let's talk about my stat of the week that you heard earlier about the super heavyweight madness atop KSW 59. Now, KSW is an organization where if there's a famous fighter or a fighter they really like, they will put them ahead of a championship fight. Now, it happens every now and then in the UFC, but KSW were like, of course we're putting Mariusz Pudzianowski ahead of some bantamweights doing whatever they're doing for the title. We don't care about that. Look at him. Look at his traps. Look at that monster. He's got all the tickets to the gun show. And so he was going to fight a 333-pound Senegalese wrestling champion who would have picked him up and thrown him out of the cage like Tank Abbott. Instead, Bombardier fell ill on like the morning of the fight. His appendix said, I'm out, and whatever exactly happens. And so he's in the hospital. KSW says, well, we don't have tickets, but we got to get Pudzianowski for a fight. We got to get him to fight anybody, calling all cows, calling all cars, calling all everybody. So they just so happen to have a training partner of one, Darko Stosic, who's a former UFC fighter, fighting on this card as a sacrificial lamb to a Polish guy. Now, Darko Stosic smeared his opponent, but that's not the point here. He happened to have a 300-pound judo sambo champion kind of coach hanging out with him, training him, sort of. Now, I will say this. KSW painted him as the champion that I portrayed to him, and I've not been able to find any championship accolades of any kind of this man right here. In fact, the only thing I found from the Judo Federation is that at one time he competed in a competition and he didn't come close to placing. But, beefcake, walrus slap fight, whatever you want to call it, two giant men coming together and doing something. And it played out exactly as you thought it would when Pudzianowski fights a guy who has never stepped in a cage before for a pro or amateur competition in MMA. He got away with a couple fence grabs, dragged the poor man down, and punched him until the referee said, all right, let's stop this because whatever. God love Milanovic. I wanted him to throw Pudzianowski on his head just because of the upset potential, and he would have too. I mean, Milanovic robbed isn't quite a good enough of a hashtag to start, but there were some real fence grabs there. So anything they got to do to get Pudzianowski a win. But super heavyweights, man, how often do we get crazy rock'em sock'em super heavyweight type of fights? So I'm surprised at everything.
Whoever put that cage together needs a little bonus. Like, I'm surprised it survived the fence grab, to be honest.
Yeah.
And for the record, I think Bombardier probably would have been able to throw him even while grabbing the fence.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that you there's no probably about it. I've watched some of his footage in the Lamb wrestling fights.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. You might have seen Juan Espino, the UFC heavyweight Juan Espino, who also competed in that and tossed guys around. This guy is 70 pounds on Juan Espino. Imagine the horrible things he does to other humans. So please get better, Bombardier. We have to see it. We need it for America and the world.
Yeah, I mean, my I'm not surprised was actually going to be that this fight was canceled at the last minute, just because we don't deserve nice things in MMA. Like this was, I was really excited for this too. Like I stayed up all night watching the Snyder Cut of the Justice League, and then I watched like a bunch of reviews and stuff for it afterwards. So it was like 4 a.m. when I went to bed. And then I was like, well, I'm going to get up early and I'm going to watch this. And I was half asleep. I turned on my computer. I'm like, all right, let's get some of this super heavyweight foolishness going, and canceled. So I was up for nothing. So that kind of sucked, but I do a different, I'm not surprised. And that comes courtesy of Luke Rockhold. We were just talking about Kevin Holland requesting Khabib to coach him Cageside. Well, Rockhold is actually having conversations about doing that with Khabib. So Khabib is apparently, pushing Rockhold to add him to his coaching staff for his inevitable comeback fight. We all knew Luke Rockhold was coming back at some point in time. So not surprised to see that happen. I think that would be a very good transition for Khabib, literally just taking the mantle from his late father, Abdulmanap, to just become a coach and share his knowledge. So looking forward to seeing what happens there, especially considering how good of a wrestler Khabib is, like his grappling chops. If you could put his mind into Luke Rockhold's abilities, ooh man, that might be a really, really dangerous combination. Just don't get punched in the head. All right, so
I gotta say real quick with Luke and Khabib, every time when I first saw that, I thought, okay, this could be fun. But then the first thing I thought was that meme they put Khabib, talking to the guy over the picture of the girl. Because is there another, let's be honest, Luke loves ladies, and so I was like, that's the first thing Khabib is going to do is like cut that out of your life. You want to be a champion, Luke. This is how we get you back there.
We want to see a sexually frustrated Luke Rockhold on a comeback tour.
That could get him to the belt, man. But when I saw that, I was like, that's the first thing Khabib is going to say.
You're going to have the angry Khabib face. You've got Luke looking back, and it's Demi Lovato's face. Perfect. I like it. I'm in. Let's do it.
What he needs to do is make Luke get the Dagestani foreguard all around. That that'll help the chin and save him from the girl problems, all in one.
Oh man, we are terrible for that. All right, so speaking of Khabib, let's dive into it. The UFC finally has acknowledged the fact that Khabib Nurmagomedov is a retired MMA fighter. All it took was 6 months of this foolishness.
I think so.
Yeah, about 6 months or so that we've been getting this will he won't he game with Dana. So now they finally decided to let him go, and now Charles Oliveira do Bronx will be taking on the former Bellator champion and one fight UFC veteran Michael Chandler for the vacant title. Let's just throw it out there, open discussion for the panel. How do we feel about this, and do we think this was handled the right way?
I don't mind, because at the end of the day, what was Dana really doing to Khabib? Like, hey, let's hang out, Khabib, I got this much money. Dana, I'm good. Next month, Khabib, I got this much money. Dana, I'm good. It's not like,
third time, pulls in Lorenzo Fertitta.
Yeah.
Like Lorenzo's I got all the money. And Khabib's like, no, fam, I'm okay.
I never got the impression that Khabib was annoyed with Dana trying. I think that he was annoyed that the media kind of kept feeding into the idea, but I don't think he minded ever one bit Dana doing that. So I think if anything, it made for fun on social media. If not, let's be honest, I think too many people maybe bought into it that, he might get Khabib back. It's like, I think most people knew that just wasn't never going to happen.
Yeah, I think among the media, I think we were pretty stern about that. Like, yeah, Khabib he's gone. Like, this is a guy who has stood by his principles for better or worse throughout his entire career. And like, I don't think he's backing down from this one. I think really Khabib probably just enjoyed getting the free steak dinners. that Dana was going. He's like, hey, well, I was like, I like ribeye, so I'll go ahead and hang out, and yeah, and I'll get a cage side seat for a couple of these fights, and yeah, and there we go, and I'll go back to my 4 guard, and then I'll go back to my farm in Dagestan and chill. Like that seemed to be what was going through Khabib's mind. Now, as far as the matchup it goes, Oliveira and Chandler, all that says to me is that Dustin Poirier really wants the McGregor trilogy fight. That's the first thing I thought.
That's the first thing I thought as well, because otherwise you've got a kind of pool of about 5 guys that are floating around up there, and Poirier is the only one that you're like, okay, if it's strictly on deserve, it's Poirier and whoever you want. You want Poirier versus the Bronx, you want Poirier versus Chandler, if you wanted Poirier versus Gates, whatever, but Poirier is the number one. The fact that he's not in there, I would agree that it's probably because he wants to chase the big check, but I love the matchup because it is a matchup between 2 guys that are new to the picture, new to the title picture. Chandler, that we never thought we'd see in the UFC anywhere near his prime. I mean, he was absolutely Bellator's biggest ever homegrown star and probably greatest homegrown fighter. And we just figured if we ever saw him in the UFC, he'd be 39 years old and on a 3-fight losing streak or some shit. Then it's the Bronx, a guy that you asked me 8 years ago, 5 years ago, hell, 2 years ago, I would have been like, he's a real fun dude to watch, but he's never going to be in the title picture. I love that these guys are meeting here and now. And I mean, Poirier's out there floating out there, but it's not like you can say that the winner of this is an illegitimate champ. These are 2 guys that have definitely earned a shot at the UFC lightweight title.
I look at this fight, and I'm with you there, Duffy. I like the fact that it's not rehashed territory again. It isn't guy that had the interim title or lost it or recently fought for it. I am okay with Gaethje not getting a title shot. He lost his last fight pretty badly. I'm thinking, what? I think he was put to sleep in the fight. So okay, I'm not ready for him to have a title shot just yet. And when I look at this fight, I'm a bad person for thinking this, but whoever wins this belt won't have it next year. So this is like an appreciation for what you've done and what you brought to us. Like Oliveira, I think of the murderer's row is too murderous. I mean, this is a division that Khabib tied the all-time defenses record for 3 title defenses. You just don't you lightweight and heavyweight have the same amount of maximum title defenses. It is just the hottest of hot potatoes. So I'm glad these guys are getting the shot. I'm glad they didn't try and go, we like Tony Ferguson. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but whatever. Gaethje lost his last fight. Okay, but he's popular. This feels like a new chapter. And even though Poirier is going to get in there and probably beat whoever wins it, once he gets past Conor McGregor this summer, probably in July, it looks like, it's going to be an interesting thing. But get that check, Dustin Poirier. You deserve it more than most of them.
Yeah, I felt like stylistically the fight, Charles and Chandler, is just so much fun. At first, I think like a lot of people will, Dustin Poirier got screwed, but then I'm like, I think most people in the know, he is so heavily favored to beat Conor in within 6 months of that rematch. So it's like, no, if anything, he's walking away. He's betting on himself to collect 2 paychecks instead of 1. Fight for the title, win or lose, but you still get the Conor paycheck. That's not going to be there, if Conor has to take another fight with the top 5 guys. So yeah, I like it. I think at the end of the day, if Poirier does what we expect him to, he's still going to be in a big fight against either of these guys. I think a lot of people will see that as the quote-unquote true lightweight title fight, which is fine, marketing and all that. But yeah, in terms of this fight, I mean, there's a lot to like about it. I want to touch on it. I think that Patricio Pitbull would love nothing more than for Michael Chandler to go out there and win it. And suddenly all the guys coming up next, like in a week, like, oh yeah, if you think Michael Chandler could run UFC, imagine me. So I think we're about to see all of that if Chandler wins soon. So I think it's just going to be interesting.
Gabriel, you definitely reminded me of something, and I've run this question before on this show, and I've definitely asked this question on the Body Lock as well. And you bring up an excellent point there. Now, if when Chandler gets that title shot and Bruce Buffer is introducing his name, do they say former Bellator champion like they did in his introduction during his UFC debut?
In for a penny, in for a pound.
I don't know. Just because I think that the UFC, when they did it, they were kind of betting on Hooker to kind of big brother Bellator.
Oh.
Yep.
And that's and it didn't work out for them, which is fine because you still have Chandler winning. And he's under your banner now. But I can't say I'm 100% in that they'll do it again, just because I don't think they want to do that. I think that Dana White's going to call an audible and say, just call him a former lightweight champion.
Or not even.
I don't think they would. I don't think they'd
him
say
the
it.
number. What is he ranked right now? He's a number 4 ranked lightweight contender according to UFC.com, and the rankings still have Khabib as champion. So I'm sure that's going to have to be updated soon.
You want to know something crazy? Connor's the favorite in the trilogy match with Poirier. Right now, as of as a Monday night, Conor McGregor's minus 140. You can get Dustin Poirier plus 120.
Yeah, get your money on Dustin.
Holy smokes! Call Bet Online.
Be right back, guys.
Yes, and it looks like July 10th would probably be the date for that fight, which means lightweight champions defend every 6 months or so. So that probably means September, October. Maybe we come back. Maybe if things are back to life again, you got your Madison Square Garden card, and you put Poirier versus or the winner of that. If you want Conor McGregor, okay, weird, but fine. That's your blockbuster right there. Poirier versus Chandler. I am all signed up. You have no idea how much I would like to see them fight.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like a way to maximize big main events. With shuffling these names like that. Ben, sorry, didn't mean to step on your toes there, buddy.
I probably shouldn't say this and get us sidetracked, but how much does your heart go out to Tony Ferguson? I just feel as though he missed the train a few too many times, and this time a year from now, we're going to be talking about like Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush like fighting their way into the title, picture, and Ferguson's just going to be kind of an afterthought, and still just one of the greatest fighters never to win an undisputed title in this division.
Dariush has to get by him in a couple weeks, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, you just heard my pick.
Yeah. I know that.
He's looking at he's still that lightweight belt that he's got at home is still just as gold as everybody else's, and I think that's that may not feel right, but I think in a few years' time that's still a good consolation prize that it wasn't his fault each time. It was just the universe didn't want that to happen. Real quick, if it were Chandler Poirier, I felt like with everything going on, the Ultimate Fighter coaches, I feel like that's as good a pick possibly as any. If it isn't. I thought maybe they might do something with the bantamweights, but if Aljo won, but I think that's probably the front runner now if it's not the welterweight title. So I personally like it.
Yeah, that idea is interesting. I mean, there's obviously been a serious effort to promote Chandler, and they've gone out of their way to feature him. I mean, they made him an African American icon. For one event, so there's a lot of effort to feature him. So that would have been a good idea for Tough. So it's been better than making him.
I mean, wasn't it like a week
hero? But whatever.
I thought it was like a week ago when I had all but confirmed that Masvidal Usman were going to coach Tough, and then the UFC at the last minute decided to make me look like an idiot and decide no, we're putting them on the title in like 2 weeks, so we're not doing that Tough thing. I mean, Tough is filming, or I thought it's March 22nd. Tough should be done filming in like a month, I think. So I don't know what they're gonna do.
I thought they weren't filming until the summer. Like it kept getting pushed back.
It's a good question because from what I know, they were going at like March was the go time. So we'll find out real soon, won't we?
Yeah, I guess we'll know before long. But I mean, now that you mention it, Usman and Masvidal too has been booked, much to my personal dismay. I
Where
don't
though?
Think Jacksonville, Florida, VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena, the same place where the pandemic era of the UFC began, is now, I guess, in the minds of some ending in Jacksonville. Crowds are back. I mean, it's a 15,000 seat arena. Does this make sense?
As we speak, like Miami Beach is declaring a state of emergency to stop spring breakers from coming down and just, setting them back a full year in terms of COVID spreading. When you're coming off as irresponsible compared to the city of Miami Beach, I mean, what more is there to say? This is a bad idea. And I say that as somebody who, is tossing around the idea of covering the Houston event live.
So, breaking news, my COVID shot, my vaccine appointment is this week. So I may be making an uninvited, unrequested trip down to cover the UFC event in Houston as well. We'll talk about that off the air.
Interesting.
I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be that fear. I think that even when it's under control, it's always going to be kind of like when you go to the beach, swim at your own risk. Live events, they're not going to put it on the front door, but it is going to be a have fun at your own risk kind of just situation. And I think that that's on everybody, whatever decision they make, because the UFC is just going to go forward with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, but the beaches that we're talking about here are like Amity Beach. Like this is the shark infestedest of waters right now in Florida. Look, it eventually has to come back around. I get it. I get the idea. I get the financial part of it. I get the fact that UFC is trying to be the biggest to come back full swing, even though they're not. Like there was a boxing event a week or so ago that had full capacity. So, they're behind that 8 ball, but Dana's still going to say, we did it. We came back first. It's not time yet. Like numbers wise, science wise, spread wise, trends wise, patterns wise, all of the wise is it's not time yet in a month to go back to jam 15,000 people in a closed arena in a state known for a high percentage of people that decide I'm not going to wear a mask today. So it's just this is a super spreader to a different level. And then going down to Houston, and I was only half joking because I'll be vaccinated, so I won't be able to get sick, except for all the other variants that are still out there that are changing, that are transforming, that you're not quite immune to. There's just, what's the rush? Is it an ego? Is it truly? And this is a question I want to ask you.
Yes.
This is an ego thing, isn't it?
That's
all it is.
Absolutely an ego thing. Like I'm very tempted to go back to I think it was the last op-ed I did for Sure Dog. It was right when the pandemic started, and it was called like Hubris and Hazmat Suits or something like that. It was all about the ego of Dana White driving this engine. And I think this is exactly what we're doing all over again. It's grossly irresponsible, to say the least. And that's to say the absolute least and put it in the most mild terms possible. We're not out of the woods just yet. We are not. It's that plain and simple. There's a reason why every big movie is hitting a streaming service right now. There's a reason why we are wearing bandanas over our faces to go get a carton of eggs. This is a reality. Unfortunately, we are still dealing with this, and therefore have to act accordingly. If we want to get out of the woods, we have to act accordingly. There was a tweet that was floating around earlier today or last night or something where we're showing a full concert in New Zealand. And it's like this, everybody's jam-packed. The band is rocking, people jumping all over top of each other, no mask, no social distancing, nothing of the sort, because they handle things responsibly from jump. Therefore, now they have earned the privilege to go back to living normal lives as far as entertainment is concerned. We as Americans have not earned that right yet we are trying to force it. It's amazing that the whole approach to this thing from the UFC, and I'm sure this is a lot of it is, I don't want to just point the blame squarely at Dana White, although he is sort of the figurehead for this and, notoriously just refuses to wear a mask no matter what the company's protocols are regarding that. I'm sure this has a lot to do with Endeavor and their debt and their efforts to keep the train rolling because the company needs that money. But man, you're still making money outside of packed arenas. You're still getting guaranteed upwards of $10 million or so from ESPN per event, no matter how crappy the card is. You're still getting a reported the equivalent of 350,000 buys per pay-per-view guaranteed from ESPN. You're still making a lot of money. And you're still grossly underpaying the fighters. So is this extra couple mil that you might get from the gate, is this going to be worth it in the end when, like, you know, half the crowd gets sick as a result and you have all sorts of calamity potentially spreading because you wanted to say we were the first when in fact you weren't anyway?
Remind me, who was the co-main event of UFC 260?
It was
Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega.
And what happened?
You just got to pencil City Kickboxing out of the next month of fights, basically.
City Kickboxing in an area of the world where they were doing pretty good. Came over to America. What happened? The camp is sick. The ones that are here stateside.
Like, it's ironic that, like, you know,
That's it. Yes.
your New Zealand fight camp, like, basically picked up COVID in America.
I mean, that's everything. At that point, we're losing title fights because of COVID concerns. When the champion is going, I got COVID. I'm okay for now, but we'll find out soon how I'm feeling. This is not a we're past it yet. There's a plateau we've reached where new cases are about a flat rate. Deaths are still fluctuating, but it's a non-zero number. And okay, fine. Non-zero is a little unfair. It's a elevated number. It's a number we shouldn't have that we are exposing people to. And I will say a callous statement that I don't believe the UFC cares because it's a financial transaction. It is a $5 million gate. It is not a concerned about the health and safety of the people coming because they're coming. The cattle will show up. We'll get their ticket money. And if they get sick, hey, they should have followed the arena regulations. That just, as an attorney, I see that and I go, God, that is skating by about as best as you possibly can. It's just, it's just, what's the rush at this point? We are still losing fights hand over foot on, fight week. This isn't we're out of it and we're able to move past it and we haven't missed fights. This card that we were going to have this past weekend, the Brunson card, had how many fights on it? 13, I think, before things started falling apart. I mean, of course, the Stoliarenko thing's a different situation, but it's just, what are we doing here? We're having the same exact discussion a year later because somebody decides we're good, and I'm looking forward to, here's my close-up, UFC, of us being villains because we're decrying your policies and moving back too early. The UFC Apex was doing just fine. You had title fights, you had big fights. You can go back to Fight Island, maybe. I don't know if that's on the table because of the money that is within that situation. It's just, I don't know. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I mean, anyone who's watched this show in the past year probably knows that my wife is a nurse, and specifically she is a nurse on a COVID unit. So, I get a very accurate kind of real time minus 2 weeks barometer of how Texas and how Houston in particular are doing. And it's going to be a weird situation in my home as UFC 262 approaches, as I prepare to perhaps cover it in a professional capacity, be present in the arena. It'll be weird if I end up having to spend a night in a hotel when I live 40 minutes from the Toyota Center. But then just to brace for what this does, as 15 or 18,000 people then go back to their homes in the Houston area. And while that's an arena full of young, healthy people that in the large majority of cases will, shrug off COVID if they pick it up, they're bringing it home to their parents, their children, their grandparents, like more vulnerable people. And it's going to be a huge ripple effect, just like dropping a giant like turd into a swimming pool.
Yeah, and just imagine too the number of those young healthy people that might have Chimaev sort of effects as well, or Cody Garbrandt, who had quite the long haul battle before this upcoming booking. So it just seems like we're rushing things too far. Like, I almost want to replay the whole segments that we had last year when the whole Tachi Palace thing was about to happen. Or when they went to Jacksonville in the first place. But at least when they went to Jacksonville, at least when they were going to Tachi,
no fans.
There were no fans. Apex Center, Fight Island, no fans, except that last run in Fight Island had limited fans, but everybody was contained within a bubble, unless you were Atman Adazar's potato bag or whatever. Everything else was contained in a bubble. You now have a major city just where, I mean, this is Florida. Like, this isn't just like a city. Like, this is like the armpit of America that just does whatever it wants, whenever it wants. So, I mean, expect foolishness to happen. So don't be surprised when we have much bigger issues and we have a much more serious discussion about this 2 weeks or so after UFC 261. And I hope I'm wrong. I certainly hope I'm wrong. I hope and pray that we are overblown in this, and the next round of villainized media videos that we get from the UFC that hey, they'll say, hey, Ant Walker was wrong. I certainly hope that's the case, but unfortunately that's just not what I feel right now. All right, fellas, now it's time to move along to the speed bag. So this is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. I'm going to set my clock here 10 seconds. You will have 10 seconds to answer each of these questions. And Ben, I will begin with you. So make sure I keep my screen on here. First question. Bilal Muhammad believes eye pokes should bring immediate point deductions. Buy or sell?
I actually wouldn't mind if at least maybe the second eye poke in a fight was treated as a foul, whether it was intentional or not. I'd be fine with that.
Jay?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I am. I like it.
I love the playing with the clock there. Gabriel? Oh, mute.
Sorry, sell. Not all fouls are equal. Some people recover.
All right. This is when Gabriel comes on, he's all fair and balanced and logical. I don't like it. All right. Next
Sorry
question.
to disappoint.
You're here for sensationalism. All right. Dana White thinks Kevin Holland had a mental breakdown when fighting Derek Brunson. Do you agree, or is this typical Dana? Jay, begin with you.
I mean, this is about as Dana. How could he know? He left halfway through the fight. Dana.
Gabriel.
Yeah, I think that's Dana saying that it's more fun watching Khabib stream than Kevin Holland on his back for a bit there.
Ben.
I mean, I don't know if it was a mental breakdown. It wasn't Paulo Filio, but it was definitely a mental lapse. I mean, he was not fighting to his best ability.
All right. Now, last question. Gabriel, you'll start this one. Leonard Garcia won at BKFC 16 this weekend and retired again. How will you remember his career?
Banger. That dude just brought it. He didn't win a lot of those big fights, but it was always fun either way.
Ben.
Fun guy to watch. Won some bad decisions through no fault of his own, and a great source of renewable wind power.
Jay.
He's only 41. You actually think he's really retired this time? He's already retired once. He's going to retire like 3 more times before it's all over with.
All right. All right, fellas. So now I'm going to change the clock over to 30 seconds. Now I will answer all 3 questions in succession. The clock will begin after reading the first question. So, Bilal Muhammad believes eye poke should bring immediate point deductions. Buy or sell? I'm buying that all the way. Whether it's accidental or not, it affects the fight, and the fighter will be compromised no matter what if he gets hit in the eye. Dana thinking that Kevin Holland had a mental breakdown is all Dana. I mean, Kevin Holland does this. Now we see he does it when he loses too. Now Leonard Garcia won at BKFC, and I will remember his career as the decision air puncher, the guy who never actually hit a target but always seemed to win a decision. But seriously, great action fighter. All right, there we go. Now, UFC 260 is the next big event. That is Saturday. It kind of crept up on me. I just saw on social media, it was like, oh, 5 days till the heavyweight title fight. It's like, oh, shit, that's coming up. So I guess we got to pay attention. Stipe and Francis Ngannou are going to do it all over again. Let's just get this out the way, man. Who you got? Gabriel, who you got between these two?
I'm going Stipe. I think that, he's grown a bit. I think he's a guy who has learned from the last fight. I think he's a guy who just, he's hitting his stride. And quite bluntly, I don't know if Francis Ngannou has grown enough in the other areas. He hasn't had to show it, but I feel like that's still a very large gap against a guy who's also grown in Stipe.
All right, Ben, who you got?
I'm still leaning slightly Stipe. I mean, he is over 2 years older, that much slower. We have actually seen him take a knockout loss since then. Those are all things that concern me. But even though Ngannou, aside from the Lewis fight, has looked sensational ever since, he has looked sensational in exactly the same way he did before their first fight. I haven't learned anything new about Ngannou, and I haven't learned anything, or I haven't seen anything to tell me that he's shored up the problems that cost him the first Miocic fight. So I'm leaning slightly towards Miocic.
All right, and Jay, who you got?
It's actually kind of funny, Duffy. I disagree with you that we haven't learned anything. I think these fights have gone by quicker. They've been better opponents, and he's finished them faster. I think this tells us more about Ngannou. I think he's more reckless, more willing to charge headlong into the fray and say, you're not going to hurt me. You're not going to take me down because I'm throwing everything I can at you. I think this, if anything, and this is going to sound weird because he's beaten he's beaten some of the best heavyweights around. He's Curtis Blades, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Name a bad win in that run that he's finished everybody in just over a minute or less. He's all forward momentum, and Stipe Miocic treated that well when he fought Fabricio Verdum. Granted, he's a grappler or whatever, but I think I'm actually leaning more towards Stipe this fight than the last fight, because Ngannou has the power to do whatever he wants. And I'll also disagree with Duffy that the knockout loss that he suffered recently is jarring, because Francis Ngannou doesn't care if you've been knocked out recently. His power is that kind of power where if he hits you, regardless of if you've got chin issues, he's going to probably hurt you. Stipe got hurt a couple times in the first fight. I rewatched it not long ago, and he kept his head in a swivel, but he got his jaw jacked a few times. So if he's not careful, he might get cracked. But I'm still going with as best as he can, have a mirror image approach to the first fight as this next fight. Pressure, clinch, takedown, getting Ngannou on a knee, take him out of that shot. I'm going Stipe here, and I'm going with what is now an upset for the champion.
Going to be back momentarily, gentlemen.
Yep, no problem. I'm gonna side with Stipe on this one.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that Stipe should get it done here. And the problem with trying to pick against Francis Ngannou is just that huge equalizing power of his fist. I mean, look at the sequence that floored Jairzinho Rozenstruik. You talk about a sloppy display of striking while he is getting effectively countered the entire time. Rozenstruik hit him with like a 2 or 3 piece combination as he's backing up with Francis charging forward, and it wasn't enough. It just took for that one shot to put his lights out. The problem is you can't really do that with Stipe so much. I mean, of course, the punch can land and you can put someone out, but realistically, like, Stipe is like way too crafty, and he has the wrestling as the equalizer. Like, I do wholeheartedly believe that Ngannou has been working on his wrestling. He's been working on his takedown defense. He's been trying to shore up cardio issues in the gym. The problem is we haven't seen it, therefore it does not exist. I am not going to buy into any narrative that is coming out of the gym. I'm only buying into the narratives that I see play out in the cage, and I just have not seen enough of Francis Ngannou to say anything. The only thing that I've seen of Francis Ngannou besides that crushing power is the same sort of sloppiness like he displayed prior to the first Stipe fight. And that's probably going to get you taken out. And also, let's keep in mind the version of Stipe we saw in the trilogy fight against Daniel Cormier. This was a leaner version of him that was faster. You add more speed on Stipe. If he comes in built like that, he is going to be so fast. I think he'll be able to get that shot in almost any time he wants, duck under and grab those legs, send them for a ride. And it's going to be, I think, an identical almost performance from Stipe, and he should get the title back on his side of town. So, what you guys say, Jay?
I wanted to ask you something about Stipe and about his the way he's going to come into this fight. He was 233 against Cormier. Remember, Cormier was actually heavier than him in the trilogy fight. So 235 pounds, over or under? Do you think Stipe is going to come in?
I think he'll come under. I think he'll come closer to what he was against DC the third time. Because if that formula worked, like,
yeah,
and I think that wrinkle will make it even more difficult for Ngannou. Like, it's one thing to say, like, I'm just gonna out muscle him and all that, but the thing is, if you're trying to out muscle Francis, you're giving him too many opportunities to knock your head off. You know, you've got to outmaneuver, you've got to be faster, you've got to do the things that he can't with that big muscle frame. And what he can do is one-shot explosions, and everything falters from there. Stipe is probably going to focus on the cardio, on the speed, and the technique, and that is going to be in his favor as a lighter fighter, in my opinion.
What do you think, boys? Do you think he's going to come in above or below 235 Stipe, that is? Duffy.
Just barely over. I'd say between 235 and 240. Kind of split the difference between his Verdum weight, where he was like 246 or 248 or something
like that,
and the really light, the Cormier fight, last Cormier fight.
And Gabe, he's we've seen most of the heavyweight champions throughout history be in that little magical under around 240 range. I mean, you only got like Lesnar is pretty much, besides him and Big Timmy, are about the only guys that really filled out that 260 frame. Ngannou is about 260, pushing it, give or take, around then. Stipe, you think he's going to be like a 230, or you think he's going to be like a 240, or what are you thinking?
I actually like him right around the middle. I think that's just his game works best that way. I don't think he's a guy who's trying to, like Curtis Blades or Derek Lewis, sit on top of you and make you feel all that pressure. I think that Stipe's game comes on being able to perform optimally 4 or 5 rounds if necessary. So I think he's going to keep it lean. I think that to that point, a lot of those guys, when you think about how well-rounded they were, besides Brock, a lot of those guys, they were so multifaceted, especially in recent years. So I think that leans into the idea that it's about being able to perform well over 5 rounds rather than I happen to be the biggest and heaviest guy, and therefore I'm the one who's always going to win because I'm going to touch you, and that's going to put you to sleep each time. So I think that's why, and I think that Stipe and a lot of those guys, that's why they figured it out, that the lighter is actually a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's I'm with you there. I think lighter is, but I think I'm going under. I'm thinking 230, 232, a real lean, mean. You're going to look at him and go like, wow, his abs have abs. It's going to be that kind of, it won't quite be there, but it'll almost be that, I wonder if we could make 205 kind of look that we're going to see there. And I think that's going to be pay dividends. You look at something, the simplest of things that Stipe does versus a lot of boxers and heavy strikers at heavyweight, he doesn't back straight up all the time. I mean, sometimes he does. Daniel Cormier walked him down and straight back. But, you think of some of the other fights where he won't just go and be chased, because that's where Ngannou gets it. He gets you in the I'm going to go straight for you, and the guy backs up, and that's it. And I mean, you think the Rosenstrike thing was a
just run out of
simple
room.
beeline, exactly. And I think that very simple the strategy that he's employed in his last 4 wins, I think Stipe is the kind of guy that can take advantage of that. But maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also too important to factor in that they are at the Apex Center, and that cage is smaller. So
cage.
yeah, it's going to be less room to get away from Ngannou. So that should play into his favor, but that also means it's less room for him to get away from the takedown. So
that's right.
Yeah, so this should be a very interesting fight right there. So Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. Gabriel, who you got?
Vicente Luque, just for the simple fact that I think that Tyron, I think that it could just be a little bit of doubt in there. I would love for him to have a Chris Weidman kind of moment and just really be like, hey, look, the show's not over yet. But I think that by comparison, Vicente, solid guy. He's had some solid performances. He had the setback with Wonder Boy, obviously, but I think that he's just a very tough guy, and I just think he's getting Tyron Woodley at the right time.
Good assessment there. Jay, who you got?
I'm trying to think of the last effective takedowns that Tyron Woodley has scored in a fight. Maybe I think he got one against Wonder Boy when he beat him, but it was that 5th round, obviously, that was the difference maker, apparently, to make that fight a win for him, even though I had the draw too. The one style that would make me think that Woodley would beat Luque is the approach that he had in his old days, in his Strikeforce days. See also Derek Brunson, who went back to his OG roots and decided, I'm strong, I'm big, I can pick you up, I can move you around, and I can put you on your back. I feel like Woodley fell a lot. I mean, obviously he's been dealing with other better grapplers recently, but he really did fall in love with his big power punch, his big right hand. And I think that Woodley was going to find himself in a firefight he doesn't want to get into. And I think that's going to favor Luque because really, seriously, the only setback he's had since like the Leon Edwards fight when he got out wrestled, which by the way, that's kind of something, was Wonder Boy, who, he didn't obviously have anything to do with the takedown. So unless Woodley goes back and says, I'm going to take you down 4 times, 6 times, 8 times, I feel like Luque is going to tee off on him. And so I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be one of those moments that Woodley might actually get off one of those big right hands, but I got Luque in this one.
All right, Ben, former champion against Vicente Luque. Who you got?
I feel as though I continue to be one of the very last people to jump off the Woodley bandwagon. A part of me still believes in him, but this is an absolutely miserable matchup for him because Woodley doesn't win rounds anymore. The last time Woodley won a round was round 1 against Darren Till. Against Vicente Luque, who's never been knocked out, and he's in a firefight almost every time, he would have to win rounds. And his game is simply not built to do that. He's become such a patient to a fault, low volume striker. He has disavowed his own elite level wrestling to such an extent that, I mean, the ways to beat Vicente Luque, like Stephen Thompson did, like Leon Edwards did, that's just not what Tyron Woodley does anymore. I don't know if it'll be an exciting fight or kind of a dull fight, but give me Luque just sweeping all 3 rounds.
Yeah, at this point, I find it very, very difficult to pick Tyron Woodley. Anybody in the top 15, I have a very difficult time siding with him. Unless we're talking about, I mean, he's not even in the UFC anymore, like a lightweight moving up to welterweight, like a Anthony Pettis or something like that. The only way I would favor Woodley at this point, and especially against Luque, it's just a horrible, horrible style matchup for this version of Woodley. So we're going to run down the list of the 3 people who have bested Woodley in his last 3 fights. Now, Kamaru Usman, cardio machine, heavy output, nonstop. Gilbert Burns, cardio machine, heavy output, nonstop. Colby Covington, cardio machine, heavy output, nonstop. What does Vicente Luque do very well? Man, a lot of output, pretty damn good cardio. And this is no, exactly.
One might say almost machine-like.
His
cardio.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is a horrible style matchup, and this is also not the guy like a Wonder Boy who it isn't necessarily like Wonder Boy. I'd say it's got really good gas tank or whatever, but he is a low output guy. If you play that game, like he's gonna give you whatever you give him. So I don't see him playing a Wonder Boy style game where he's just waiting for Woodley to do something so he can do something. No, he's going to run at him and he's going to start throwing hands, and Woodley has to deal with that. So if he does that typical back up and let your foot hit the cage, hit the fence, and then you try to explode out, that's going to be a rough day at the office. That is going to be a rough day. I think Luque is going to overwhelm Woodley, and it's going to be clear by the end of the first round what sort of fight we're going to get. I think the only question is, can Woodley survive? I'd say he can, considering how he outlasted the clock with Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, and was on his way to doing the same thing with Colby Covington until his rib broke. So I think Luque wins a horribly lopsided decision, and quite frankly, I think this is going to be the last time we see Tyron Woodley in the UFC. I think this is going to be the thing that finally gets Dana to do what he's always wanted to do, and that's get rid of him. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to watching that take place. Now, I'll begin with you, Jay, on this one. Thomas Almeida, Sean O'Malley, who you got?
I don't know if I have ever been on the Sugar Show train, and I picked Marlon Vera to beat him. I believe I picked him to outlast him. I didn't think that he would kick his leg out and then elbow him in the face repeatedly. See, here's the thing, is that Sean O'Malley fights long, outstretched leg, a lot of reaching, pawing kicks and all that kind of thing like that. And he leaves his front leg exposed. Who kicks front legs just like Marlon Vera? Thomas Almeida kicks the lead leg pretty darn hard. Now, this is an Almeida who hasn't won a fight since 2016. This is a deflated, a lot of people were saying USADA beat him, and that's kind of sad, but well, I mean, his performances are a little funny. He's been a lot chinnier than he was. I don't know if it's Cody Garbrandt cracked it, or because Jimmy Rivera knocked his block off a couple times. Rob Font put him away. And that fight against Jonathan Martinez, where it made us wonder, is Jonathan Martinez the real deal, or is Thomas Almeida fading? I probably am going to mess this one up, but I'm going to go with Almeida by replicating the success that Vera had, just destroying the lead leg as O'Malley doesn't check kicks and reaching at him with long shots. I think O'Malley has a reach advantage in the hands. But I see, if we even have glimmers, here's where I stand. The Almeida at what we thought was his peak, when he was killing Anthony Burchak and running over Brad Pickett, and that was a long time ago, and had a shot against Cody Garbrandt until he didn't anymore. That level of Thomas Almeida is higher than where Sean O'Malley is now. So if we can get a glimpse of that Thomas Almeida, which I'm thinking we might, I'm going to go with Almeida, with his damage and with what he can do to beat Sugar.
All right, Ben, who you got?
If you'd asked me this before the Almeida versus Jonathan Martinez fight, or even if you had substituted Almeida in for Marlon Vera against O'Malley in his last fight, I might have gone with Almeida, but just Almeida looked so deflated against Martinez that even though some of O'Malley's vulnerabilities have been laid bare, I just don't trust Thomas Almeida to take advantage of them. I think O'Malley probably zaps him and does something spectacular to him. I mean, this is O'Malley getting back on track. It doesn't answer any of my questions about O'Malley as he moves in towards taking on top 10, top 5 fighters, but at least for that night, this coming Saturday, the hype train will be back in full force.
Yeah, I'm now. Oh yeah, Gabriel. Sorry, about
It's all
to
good.
steal your thunder. Who you got?
I'm actually going Sean O'Malley too. I think that yeah, like you guys said, the fight with Jonathan Martinez for Almeida wasn't the best one. He hasn't really been able to recapture that when showed up and he was really just putting it all together pretty well. But I think with Sean O'Malley, I mean, it's such a weird thing because we've seen just how when he's on, his ability to control the distance. Now, what's going on. I don't know how much I believe the ankle wraps and all that. I do find it suspect that a guy that young who seems to have it down, it seems to keep having these kinds of issues, right? So that to me is like, hey, whether it's physiological, whether you've had a doctor check it, whether you just bluntly have messed with your wraps for your ankles, I think that's something that he needs to address. But I think the Sean O'Malley, when he's on, is enough to really just get this version of Thomas Almeida. I think that Thomas Almeida kind of needs a bit of a throwback performance, but I think that would be saying that Sean O'Malley is going to be missing a step. He's still a young guy with a lot of those physicality and the weapons, and I think that's going to, even in a tough fight, I think that's going to carry him through it.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with a lot of what you guys are saying here. Sean O'Malley should win this fight. That's who I'm picking on this. Thomas Almeida, I mean, this is like a teed up matchup for
Yes.
O'Malley to get him back on track. There's a reason why they're turning to a guy who has not won his last 3 or 4 fights in order to welcome O'Malley back from his first loss. There's a reason for this, and there's a reason why it is a striker who, despite a lot of times being the more technically proficient guy, which I think against Cody Garbrandt he was technically the better striker, but man, he'll stick his chin out and he'll just start slugging at you. Even the Brad Pickett fight, I mean, he didn't have to fight it like that. He didn't have to do that, but that's what he chose to do. If you put someone like that in front of Sean O'Malley, it's going to tee up all sorts of opportunities for him to do all sorts of precise moves and trick combinations and whatnot. And I think we're going to get a clinic. Now the only question about this to me is whether or not Sean O'Malley put the baby down and stopped doing heroin before this fight. So that's all I have to wonder. But all in all, it should be O'Malley's victory there. Now, I think that's going to do it for this edition of Unleashed. Big thanks to the homie Gabriel Gonzalez for joining us once again. Check him out on Cageside Press. You'll hear him every press conference just about asking some very intelligent questions in such a professional voice that I can't do that. I'm not that professional.
You're a mean guy. That's what you are.
I am a mean guy. I'm sure I'm banished from the promotion at this stage of my career. So thank you, Gabriel, for joining us.
I can't afford to be kicked out, like
Yeah.
I don't got that flexibility the others do. If the day Dana White says he's out, they're not going to be like, no, we could find somebody else to do the same thing. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
You're not expendable, Gabriel. We love you. And of course, big thank you to Ben and Jay as always. So you can check their work out on Sherdog.com, Cageside Press for Gabriel and myself. You can find me on MMA On Point and the Body Lock. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So stay beautiful, stay positive, stay out of a 15,000 seat arena, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.